Hello, educators. So today what I would like to do is talk about what it means to be an anti-racist educator and how do we engage our students through an equity and justice framework. And what I'm going to say here is that while we're seeking structural change, societal change in terms of our students not having adequate preparation, the right resources, facing racism and poverty sometimes along the way, that it's important to also think about the day-to-day practices that we can engage in to help them transform their lives, to help them do better in their careers, and also to help them become individuals that seek out social justice. Or maybe they're already seeking out justice, but they need a framework, they need an understanding, they need for an educator to be there for them so that they can feel that they can start careers in which they can continue to advocate for themselves and their communities. Before I continue, I just want to share a short video clip that talks a little bit about my own journey.
Now, another in our series on the nation's high school dropout crisis. Tonight, one man's journey from gang member and dropout to professor, and his efforts to keep other young men from making his mistakes. Ray Suarez has our American graduate story.
My name is Victor Rios. In 1994, this was me. I was introduced to the nation in a Frontline documentary. I was a gang member, a juvenile delinquent, and a high school dropout.
But in the 18 years that followed, Victor Rios earned his high school diploma, finished college, earned a PhD from the University of California at Berkeley, and wrote 2 books on his life and his research on juvenile delinquency. He now teaches sociology at UC Santa Barbara and helps at-risk youth navigate the perils of adolescence.
I'm sure you're closer to some people than others.
Rios is also a family man with a wife, Rebecca, and 3 children. Life is constantly busy.
To be this far into the future, I feel like I've lived 2 lifetimes. So 2 lifetimes. As an educator, you have the power to help individuals that have experienced bias, discrimination, inequality, racism, to be able to bypass those systems, to be able to become an advocate that works to change those systems, to improve the quality of life for all individuals in this country, regardless of race, regardless of what neighborhood they're born in, regardless of what language they speak, that you have the power to support these young people in terms of disrupting bias and inequality. And the way you do it is, again, on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to get into some strategies later on towards the middle end of the presentation, but thinking about the ways that educators have the key to provide opportunities for young people that have been left behind. Some of you teach K-12, some of you teach career technical education and also adult education. So for those of you teaching sort of the older individuals, if you will, that are trying to get a true second chance at life, maybe actually this is their 3rd or 4th chance at life, that they've already had many experiences in life where they had to grow up quickly when they were kids, where they've had to figure out how to survive. I'll give you an example. My brother, he was 7 years old. I was 3 years old, and my mom would go to work. I didn't have a father. He abandoned me before I was born. So my mom would go to work, and she would go to work for 10 hours a day. She would lock the door from the outside, and we were trapped in our studio apartment. And so my brother had to entertain me, feed me, and make sure I didn't fall out of that 2nd story window. A 7-year-old taking care of a 3-year-old. By the time my brother gets into school and tries to make it through, he's really not thinking about his education. He's thinking about surviving. He's thinking about helping his family. He's thinking about really being an adult at such a young age. I know that for many of the students you serve, they've had to grow up quickly when they were younger. And now maybe some of them, if they're adults and they're getting a vocational, technical, or adult education, or if they're in college, or they're trying to go to college, right? They're trying to get another chance at life. And so the framework, the perspective should be, how do we look at these individuals as individuals who are trying hard to get another opportunity at life, to live a better life, to reach prosperity? A lot of times we focus on resilience, which is good. It's about surviving. But many times, young people don't just want to survive, they also want to thrive. And so if we're just focused on seeing their resilience and teaching them resilience, we keep them here. We're middle class kids. They get to prosper. They get to go to college. They get to go to the university. They get to have good careers. And so we have to look at students that have had adversity in their lives as students that can also reach a level of prosperity. So the framework should be both resilience and prosperity, thinking of our students as individuals that can prosper and not judging them, not saying this one's not going to prosper, this one will. This one's not going to prosper, this one will prosper. All of them can prosper if we provide them the right opportunities and the right resources. So I'm growing up in this environment of poverty. I'm growing up in this environment where there's a lot of detriment, a lot of hopelessness. I'm growing up in a time when there's a big crack epidemic in my community, and I'm getting to see this epidemic. I'm seeing a lot of violence as a child, and the situation is just bad. I mean, sometimes in this poverty, we can't even pay for the electricity bill, and we have to run an orange extension cord from the neighbor's house. Sometimes in this poverty, people are breaking our window to steal our stuff, the very little things that we did have. And the landlord, instead of replacing the window, would just board it up with a piece of plywood. So I'm feeling desperate in this situation, and I go into the school system, and the school, while it's trying to do its best to educate me, also doesn't understand where I'm coming from. The discrimination there, maybe not overt discrimination, but the discrimination there was first a discrimination against the poor. I'll give you an example. I was in third grade. I'm sitting in the front of class. My teacher asked me to read a word on the board, and I was refusing to read the word. And she yelled at me, threatened me, eventually kicked me out because I wouldn't read the word. She thought I was being defiant. But the reason I wouldn't read the word is because I needed glasses. I needed glasses from a young age, but I didn't get a first pair of glasses until I was 14 years old. That's how poor we were. And today, many kids in this country suffer through health inequality, through residential inequality, through educational inequality, and we tend to blame them. Oh, you couldn't get a good education? You didn't work hard enough. Oh, you have bad health care? Well, guess what? You haven't worked hard enough to get a good job, to get good benefits. So we tend to blame the poor in this country. And so here I am being kicked out of class for something I had no control over, a health condition. I needed the technology of glasses. And so thinking about the ways that nowadays our children, our young people, our adults returning to school need technology to be able to learn. And yet we blame them and say, well, if they can't get on, they can't log on, that's on them. I'm going to just keep teaching. So we're discriminating against the poor. Something to reflect on. The other factor is that we also discriminate against people as a school system education, K to 20 and beyond, not just by class, by them being poor, but also by culture, how they were raised, how they came up, how they think about the world, maybe the language they speak, maybe their style of conversating with people. I'll give you another example. When my teacher kicks me out of class, this is third grade, I go to the principal. He starts to scold me. He starts to yell at me. He says to me, Victor, what's going on with you? Why aren't you behaving in class? I'm very disappointed in you. And I'm trying to just be nice and respectful, so I'm looking down. And he says to me, look at me in the eyes when I'm talking to you. And I'm still not looking at the guy in the eyes because at home, in my culture, I was taught you don't look at authority figures in the eyes. It's a sign of disrespect. But in America, you got to look at me in the eyes and shake my hand to close that business transaction. So, two different worlds colliding, two different cultures colliding, conflict between two cultures. Which one is right? Which one is wrong? My principal is trying to teach me to survive and make it in the United States of America. My culture is trying to teach me to be respectful and loyal to my family and to people in authority. Neither one of them was right. Neither one of them was wrong, right? Both could be used. And that's the problem, that sometimes we don't embrace other cultures. We don't embrace where people are coming from. We just dismiss it. We say, well, if you can't learn our way, then you're not going to make it. You're not going to survive. You're not going to become a professional. And guess what? We can't help you. Instead, that principal should have said, look, Victor, I know that maybe in your culture, in your community, you don't look at people in the eyes as a sign of respect. But I'm going to teach you another way of doing business. And it's okay. You could be a shapeshifter. You can go back and forth. You could come to this world, be a professional, show respect in one way, and then go back to your world and show respect in another way. Both are crucial. Both are important. They're an essential part of your identity. So educators, I guess what I'm saying here is that it is important to reflect on how we might be discriminating against our students based on their class background, poverty they might come from, and number two, the cultural background, the communities they come from. Now, it just doesn't have to be another race, right? People of another country. I'm just talking also about if you grow up in a certain neighborhood, a certain environment, and that environment brought you up to show respect in a different way, that respect is shown in the conventional society. How do we bring those together and say, you can be both? Another example of that is this idea of hustling, right? Hustling could sound criminalized, it could sound negative. But if we turn it around and say, look, you've learned to hustle, you've learned to survive. What if you turn that hustle into an academic hustle, into a professional hustle? What if we train you, right, to get this vocational career, this technical career, this college career, this university career, right, with those practices and strategies you've learned to survive? We're just going to use them to teach you how to make it in the conventional world. You can keep where you come from and be proud of it, and also make it in this world. You are a shapeshifter, right? So that keep bringing out this idea in our students that they could be from both worlds, be proud of it, and be respected for it. So as a kid who was kicked out of his classroom in third grade and then yelled at by his principal, I just turned off from education because already my environment's too intense for me anyway. School's not paying my bills, so I end up with other interests. I drop out of school in 8th grade and I end up pushing lawnmowers, thinking I'm gonna make enough money to help my mom out. If I'm not making enough money, I'm making $1 an hour, $10 a day. And I end up on the streets. I end up hustling. I end up going to juvie. I'm in and out of juvie, not learning my lesson. And then one day, my best friend is shot and killed. This is when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go in life. I was trying to figure out whether I would end up dead or in prison, or if I could have a second chance. And again, educators, you have the key to providing second chances to individuals who have been left behind, who have suffered through inequality, who have suffered through discrimination. You have the key, but you also have the key to discriminate against them. So you decide, right, what kind of educator you're going to be. Will you be an anti-racist educator, or will you be an educator that is perpetuating the system? I'll say it again. Will you be an anti-racist educator, or will you be an educator that's perpetuating the system? So speaking of perpetuating the system, humans are interesting in that society changes, technology changes, but we end up discriminating against each other in the same ways, even though we're in a new day, in a new era. Malcolm X used to say, racism is like a Cadillac. They bring a new one out every year. There's a new model every year. There's a new way of seeing racism, classism, discrimination. In this case, you see a child that's trying to learn, and then he's looking through the window, and there's another child that gets the technology, the resources to learn. This boy just has a pencil and a paper, old school. The other boy has his laptop and is able to learn. We cannot continue to exclude children from learning because they don't have the technology. How do we do it? It's a challenge. One of the ways to do it is to take serious this idea of asynchronous learning. We have to take serious this idea of asynchronous learning. Asynchronous learning, by definition, is learning independent of time or space. That means I can learn from you wherever I'm at, whenever. And the way to do that is to put our teachings in different formats. It could be via Zoom, Google Classroom, other platforms that the institution we work for are set up to do. But also beyond that, it could be on videos, whether it be videos we post on YouTube or videos that we post within the institution's video posting service. It could be through social media. Some teachers are being very creative and getting on TikTok and teaching their students through TikTok. Some find controversy in TikTok. That is fine. You don't have to be on TikTok. But what I'm saying is you find multiple mediums. You decide what those mediums are, and you teach your students through those multiple mediums. So if they can't access your Zoom class, maybe they can access you through other spaces on cyberspace whenever they can have some time to look through technology. So another example is a teacher I met. She downloaded an app where her dog would talk. The app would make it appear that her dog was talking. And she didn't like being on camera, but her dog was on camera talking to her students, giving them kind of lessons. And it was really awesome because the students were like into it, and they were just like, thought it was funny. It was kind of cheesy, but it was funny. It was just humanized. It humanized the teacher for the students. And it took serious idea of asynchronous learning, that maybe some students couldn't get on screen, but later on they could be watching little videos of her dog teaching lessons to them. And that's just one example. You could come up with many, many other examples of other mediums for teaching. Sometimes we could just go old school and just, do email, texting, ways in which, students that can't access the advanced technology can still have an opportunity to learn from you. So when we think of students that are out in the streets, students that have left school already, In our society, many times we label them in negative ways, in a deficit perspective. In our society, many times we label them as at risk, right? So when we look at these students, they're students I studied for one of my books. They actually, it was a school day and middle of the day, and one of them's holding a liquor bottle in his hand, right? And you think, whoa, these kids, their future looks bleak. So society assumes they're at risk. But let me just say that what you label me determines how you will treat me. If you label me a risk, you're going to treat me as a risk. And when you treat me as a risk, there's really little solution for me because it's a negative deficit perspective. But what if we think of students as that promise? Well, if you label me as a promise, at someone with the potential for prosperity, you're going to think of me as someone that can make it, and you're not going to doubt me. And when I see you not doubting me, it's going to help me boost my future possible self. That I'm going to think like, yeah, I could get through this program. Yeah, I could get a technical degree. Yeah, I could get this adult education. Yeah, I could get this college degree. Yeah, I could get this credential, and I could make it one day. I could make it in the future because this teacher believes in me, because this program believes in me. I am seen as someone that can contribute. I'm not seen as a threat. I'm seen as an asset. Crucial in this work of being an anti-racist educator to not see our students as threats, but instead we see them as assets. Because I'm just going to say it, I'm going to argue this because I have evidence to show it. This idea of at risk is a racist idea because who we label at risk most of the time in major metropolitan areas, majority students of color, youth of color, people of color. And a risk, a negative label on a racialized population is racism. So we have to get rid of deficit language in order to start the process of getting a hold of inequality.
There's a lot of kids, they have potential, but it has not come to the forefront.
Potential to do what?
Potential to graduate, potential for further education, most of them.
So I wanted you to see that clip because a teacher says to my teacher, when I'm being dragged out of the hallway, this is in high school, it was a national documentary that happened to be at my school that year. It came out on Frontline, PBS. My teacher had a conference with other teachers on how to handle these gang kids. And you see me getting dragged out by a police officer. And she said these kids have potential. And this other teacher says, potential to do what? Potential to do what? Right? When we doubt, when we even ask the question, these kids have potential to do what? We're lost as educators. We're not gonna be successful. And we have to pin our success on the success of our students. In other words, for me to feel successful as an educator, I need to know that my students are successful. Otherwise, I'm not successful. A lot of educators, they'll just say, oh, I taught my lesson, I'm successful. No, that's not the definition of success. Are your students successful? If their students are successful, then you are successful. That's a tough one. That's tough, but it's doable. So this teacher did not see me as a threat. She did not see me as a risk. This teacher humanized her students and their families. She made us feel that we had potential, that we could prosper one day in life. When my best friend passed away, I didn't know who to turn to. I went to one place where one adult had told me she would be there for me. I went to school to look for my teacher, Miss Russ. And Miss Russ was the kind of teacher that was always in your business. Miss Russ was the kind of teacher that was relentless. She didn't care if you were at risk, if you were a thug, a gangster, a criminal. She took care of you and she trusted you. And she believed in her students so much that at some moments it kind of weirded her students out. Like, why is she so nice? Why is she thinking I'm gonna make it? What makes her think that? I'm just some street hustler. What is she talking about? But you know what? This teacher reaches out to me, finds out what happens to my friend, and in this one encounter in the hallway at school one day, she asked me if I'm okay. And I'm trying to be a tough guy, and I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. She taps me on the shoulder, and right when this lady taps me on the shoulder, all my pain, all my fear, all my anger began to grow, and I began to cry like a little kid in front of the whole school. And you know what this teacher did? She opened her arms up. She gave me a hug. She said, Victor, I am here for you. If you're ready to do the work, I'll be here for you. But I need you to do the work. If you're ready to change your life around, I'll be here for you. But I need you to do the work. I thought about what my teacher told me. I started to work towards catching up on my credits. She put me in 0 period extra credit. She put me in lunchtime extra credit. She put me in night school at the community college and some special program they had for credit recovery. And I'm proud to tell you that with the help of my teacher, I graduated from high school on time and with my class. And right around college time, application time, she says, Victor, it's time to apply for college. I'm like, I'm not going to college. She's like, yes, you are. She showed me a sheet that compared what a college graduate makes versus what a high school graduate makes. And then I realized, oh, I have to go to college if I want to help my family out. She also convinced me that to help my family and my community, in order to do that, I had to get an education. And you see, some of us come from familial cultures. That means that if I make it, my whole family makes it. So I'm not thinking about just myself. I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about my community. And she helped me realize that I could be of service to my family and my community through a college education. And that's what made me decide it's time for me to go to college. So this teacher flipped the deficit model. She saw her students as having potential, having promise, and that they would one day be prosperous. And with the help of my teacher, I ended up in college. I couldn't believe it. I worked full time for 4 years. I went to college for 4 years, graduated, and then went off to UC Berkeley to a doctoral program. Finished that doctoral program in 4.5 years. In the year 2005, I became Dr. Victor Rios. With the help of this teacher, the sky was the limit. So because of someone like you, I found a key. What key do you think my teacher helped me find? Well, I'll tell you. I graduated from Berkeley on a Sunday. There's my mom, real happy. On a Monday, I'm at the bank asking for a home loan. I purchased a home. A few weeks later, I got the key, went to my mom's dilapidated apartment and knocked on her door. She opens the door, she smiles, says hello. I pull out the key from my pocket. And I said, Mom, I'm sorry you had to wait 30 years for this. But here are the keys to a proper place to live. You see, educators, the work that you do is the work of saving lives. The work that you do when you humanize your students, when you fight against systems of discrimination by providing that positive support and the resources to your students, and by speaking up against racism and classism. The work that you do is life life-saving, life-altering, life-changing work. An educator is often a final frontier of hope. And as a final frontier of hope, what you do is you save lives, lives of individuals that might not have otherwise made it. So, what we create together as a community, what we create together is a continuum of care. Administrators, educators, families, programs, mentors all come together to create a system of support for our students so that they're able to thrive, they're able to be prosperous. Again, we have to humanize our students on a day-to-day basis. And here's an example that my teacher would always say. She would always say, I don't teach subjects, I teach students. I don't teach subjects, I teach students, right? So humanizing me means don't focus on your program. Don't focus on your technical specialty. Don't focus on your vocational specialty. Don't focus on your adult education credential. Don't focus on your university professor credential. Don't focus on your subject as a high school teacher. No. Focus on me. Be an expert of me, right? So to defy systems of oppression, we have to know our students. To be an anti-racist educator means that we know the worlds that our young people, that our students come from. Have we paid virtual visits to our families? Have we paid in-person visits to families when we're not in quarantine? Have we understood the cultures, the many cultures, many communities, many neighborhoods that our students come from? If the answer is yes, then you're on your way. If the answer is no, then you have some work to do. One of the things my teacher did is she drive to my neighborhood once a semester, just knock on doors. Right now, I know of teachers that are driving to neighborhoods, they're not knocking on doors, they're keeping their distance, but they're waving hello from their cars. And students feel it, sense it, and gain respect because those are educators that are making themselves visible. I'll show you a short video clip of another film.
Your family struggle. And sometimes in that struggle, you find unhealthy ways to forget about that struggle. To deal with that struggle. Drugs, the streets, the hustle, abuse, self-abuse, self-hate, self-doubt, not believing in yourself, not signing up for this great program. You know what? School is not about just you. It's about your familia that has struggled. It's about your community and bringing your community up. And this is one of your opportunities to do it.
Staying out of gangs, that would be the most difficult because, I don't know, like, being out of there is not that easy, you know, because you may have stopped, but your enemies always remember you, always remember who you are, your face, or like, you can't change that. You may got enough of that lifestyle, but like, your enemies are still there. They're gonna forget about you. To me, I look at the street life as a sport. It was a sport because, I don't know, a lot of things you do, but at the same time, you put your life in risk.
3, 2, 1, go!
Come on, try to put your feet over. Come on. Hey, don't grab this rope, William.
Hey man, I can't do this.
Yeah, you can do it. Hey, lift up your left leg. Yeah, grab on from it and lift up your left leg.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's go, 3 feet, that's it, William. 3 feet, baby.
3 feet. Come on. Just take 3 steps. 3 steps, bro. Just 3 steps.
Espérate, güey. Bájate, madre. You got it.
There you go.
Hold the rope, baby. You got it.
Walk.
Got you.
Walk.
Got you. Hold the rope and just walk, baby.
2 more steps. 2 more steps.
Let's go. Just keep walking. You got it.
Do it, baby.
Just focus on the rope.
There you go, William.
Walk, baby. You got it. Just gotta walk, babe. You gotta walk. Come on, William. You got it. I got this shit. I love it.
get it, bro.
Nah, hell no.
Hey, remember, I'm about to hop over that way 'cause my leg goes straight out that way.
All right. So these were students that had dropped out of school, had been pushed out of school. They were between the ages of 18 and 24. And we developed a program for them. And it was 40 of them. And we were just trying to, help them out, trying to see how mentoring, extracurricular experiences, social, emotional support would fare in terms of transforming their lives. And many of them made it. Many of them finished their certification for high school. Many of them went on and signed on for different programs at the community college. And the experience we really acquired as researchers from this project was that we were able to see that a small amount of positive emotional support from relevant adults made a huge difference for students that had been really, really relegated and placed at risk by society, right? To us, they were at promise. To us, we knew they could prosper, and we treated them as such, and they made it. So find out more at thepushouts.com. Okay, so I'm going to start to conclude here. And I want to leave you with this idea of educator projected self-actualization, that you constantly project for your students as you're seeking justice, right? As you're seeking anti-racism, as you're seeking to change systems of oppression. You project for your students a future that they haven't even begun to imagine because of how these systems have treated them. And one of these systems I call educator projected self-actualization. Right? It's the counter to these systems of oppression. I've been treated negatively. I've been called a criminal. I've been talked about as not contributing to this country my whole life. Well, guess what? My teacher actually projects for me a positive future where I can become someone important in life and I could help to make change in this world. One example is my teacher never saw me as the guy on the left there who was a gang member, even though that's who I was. When she met me, she saw me as the guy on the right. And the guy on the right was a professional that had not been created for 20 more years. And she said to me in high school, she said, "Victor, I'm so proud of you. I know one day you'll meet presidents." I laughed at her. I said, "Miss Fresh, you're crazy." 20 years later, I get invited to the Obama White House to advise the administration on gun violence and policing in America. Even my son and my daughters and my wife got a chance to hang out afterwards, the White House lawn. And at some point, President Obama comes out. And I couldn't believe it. There I was, close to President Obama. I'm holding my son in my arm. And President Obama comes and says hello to the crowd. And he comes up to my son and he says, "Give me 5. Don't leave me hanging." And right when President Obama's hand and my son's hands touched, guess who I'm thinking about? Miss Russ, you really are crazy. How can an educator project or predict the future? Well, you can't predict the future, right? You're not Nostradamus, but you can project the future. You can project for students a positive future, especially if you're pushing for resources for them, especially if you're speaking up against inequality, especially if you're relentlessly supportive of them when other people are not being supportive of them. The transformative educator teaches through equity and justice. What that means is you're constantly reflecting on race and racism. And you use data, right? Data is important. What are students saying during quarantine? They're saying they want to be understood. They want more one-on-one attention from educators. They want less homework and more home care. And they want their educators to meet them where they are at. That's what it means to reflect on data related to race and racism. Here's more data where high school students, in this case, low-income students want more emotional support. Middle-class students don't care about emotional support as much as low-income students. So if you're teaching low-income students, guess what? You might have to teach more through an emotional support framework. And then finally, constantly reflect on how our power and privilege is impacting our teaching on a day-to-day basis. How am I discriminating against students? We all do it. Have honest, courageous conversations with each other of how you're doing it. Is it students with disabilities you're discriminating against? Is it low-income students? Is it that you're saying, oh, I made it and I grew up poor and look, they should make it too? That's already discrimination, right? Because essentially what you should be saying is, I made it, let me show you how I made it, and hopefully that inspires you to make it too, rather than judging people. That's discrimination. Finally, educators, my teacher believed in me so much, she tricked me into believing in myself. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.